Great. Thanks, Mark. Okay. So over this next half hour, we're going to spend some time talking through Windows 10. And we're going to give you an overview of what that is and other areas around Windows 10. So in detail, we're going to focus on how to navigate from Windows 10, from Windows 7, what's new in Windows 10, and the version I'm using is the latest version called the Anniversary Edition that came out about a month ago. So there's a couple of new things in Windows 10, including Cortana and an Edge browser. And we're going to have some setup tips around Microsoft accounts and Office 365 accounts. So the first thing I wouldn't mind doing is actually having a quick poll. So I'm going to share a poll with you. I just want to see what versions of Windows 10 Windows you're using at the moment. So you're going to see shortly just a quick poll coming up. In fact, that's going to come up on your screen now. So if you could fill that in, that would be great. Excellent. Thank you, everybody. So it looks like half of us are already using Windows 10, so that's good. And the rest of us are using about a third on Windows 7 and a small number on Windows 8. The poor child when it came to Office, to Windows. So that's good. Hopefully those that are on Windows 10 will pick up a few tips along the way. So the first thing I want to go through is navigation in Windows 10. So I'm just going to shut down this PowerPoint and you'll be able to see, and we'll go through a few tips here. Great. So you should all see my screen coming up now. Excellent. So Windows 10 looks quite similar to Windows 7 in the fact that you've got a start menu on the bottom left that you can pull up. So when I select that, you'll see that the menu pops up. Here's where it gets a little bit different though. You'll see that there's a very big area out to the right. So that's called the start menu. You can adjust the size of that if you want. On the left-hand side are your apps. And these are the apps that you regularly use. So that's not unsimilar to Windows 7. Now what it does do is it starts to remember what you've recently added. So you can see that I've been using GoToTraining and Camtasia and they're coming up automatically. And then the most used apps are the apps that you use on a regular basis. So that's Outlook and PowerPoint and Skype in that basis. You'll also see, and this is new in the latest version, these suggested apps. So yes, these are advertisements that come through with suggested apps that you may wish to purchase. That may be able to be turned off in the enterprise versions, but certainly not in the general business versions. If you want to search for an app, you can come in and you can either just type and it'll search for it in the search area at the bottom, or you can search for it by looking down through the list. If there's an app that you want to use on a regular basis, you may choose to right click and you've got two options. You can pin it to the start and that pins it to the start menu down here. You can move that around, so I may want to choose to actually move, where's it put PowerPoint? I want to put PowerPoint over here with this group and I want to name this group Office 2016. So I can click up here and you see where this menu bar here appears. You can pick that up. You can actually pick up that whole group and move it around if you wanted to. If you don't want things on this menu, you can right click and unpin them from the start. So the start menu is the menu that pops out to the right. You can also right-click on an app and pin it to the taskbar down the bottom. So say Sway, I'm going to pin that to the taskbar down the bottom and it appears on my task list at the bottom. The other menu options you've got here is File Explorer. So that's the ability to be able to explore files, and we'll spend a bit more time in that later on. The Settings menu, which we're going to dive into later on, and your Power button. So the ability to power, sleep, shut down, etc. There's nothing really hugely new in that area. So we'll move on to how to customize these tiles. Obviously you can pull this menu out and have it as large as you like or as narrow as you like. You can also choose to remove ones that you don't want. So if you unpin from start, you can actually remove these off. Now you notice here, as I say, this one that talks about life at a glance, you can actually change the size of these apps as well. So I can come in and right click on an app and resize it and make it really large if I want to. And if we watch this weather one, you'll see that that will change. There's the weather and the news one. The news one has changed. And it's actually feeding through live information as you want. So there we go. The weather one's changed now and feeding through live information on that tile. So that'll change as the headlines change. As we can see, the news one's changing as well. When you're right down the bottom in the start menu, you can right click. So right down on the left hand side here, and I right click, and you've got some of the usual commands that you've seen in the past. So that's the start menu. On the left hand side on the bottom side down here is the taskbar. You can see that I've got some underlines here. It's showing applications that I've already got open. So I've got the PowerPoint open, I've got GoToTraining open, and I've got Skype open. You can see that they are open already. If I had two web pages open, so let's just jump into the press. If I come down here, you can see that I can choose, I can see the press, and it'll actually show me whether I've got one or two open. If I've got two versions of Excel open, it allows me to jump between the multiple versions of Excel as well. On the taskbar on the bottom, you can also right-click and unpin from the taskbar if you don't want these down the bottom. One of the new areas in Windows 10 Anniversary Edition is this task view. So if you click on this, it actually shows you all the apps that you've got open. You just toggle back and forward on that. It also gives you the ability to create what's called a new desktop. I'm not sure if this will work with GoToMeeting, so we'll find out. But that desktop, yes it does. So I've now got two desktops open. So I've got one here, and I've got a second desktop as well. There we go, it jumps back in. So that's quite a neat feature if you're used to using multiple desktops. If you've used a Mac for a while, you'll go, oh, I know that because Macs have done that for a long period of time. Right over on the right-hand side here is what's called the Action Center. So this pops out. Now there's a couple of areas that and the best way to think of this is like a smartphone. You can have new notifications that come through, and you've also got some settings. So I could have quiet hours where I don't want to get reminded, or I can choose to control my settings. So if I come into the All Settings area, it opens up the settings window, which you'll look as a little bit different to what you had in the past in Windows 7. And there's a couple of areas that I want to cover. Also, you'll notice that down in your GoToMeeting invite, you'll see in materials there's a quick start guide, and this goes into a little bit more information. So you just need to click on that link and you can jump into that. Now, one of the important things is probably the system, and first of all the default apps. So you go into System and Default Apps, and this allows you to choose which applications you have as default. So by default, Microsoft Edge browser, which is the new browser with Windows 10 comes in. You can change that if you want. It'll remind me a couple of times and say, do you really want to do that, obviously? And I'm not going to do that in the stage, but if you want to change to Chrome or Internet Explorer, you can do that. You also set up your default email as well. So that's well worth doing. This notifications is also important. This notifications, just like when you're using a phone, you can choose whether you get notifications to swipe in from the right, etc., etc. And you can choose which of these to turn on and off. So if I was to receive a new email now, it would pop in as a banner into the notification center, which is not what I wanted to do. But that's certainly an important area to go through and customize. So that's all we're going to spend on settings. As I said, you can come into the quick guide here on the right, but well worth working through there as you start using Windows 10. There'll be areas that you want to turn on and off. The next area I wanted to cover off was Edge, which is the new Internet Explorer browser, a new browser. So to get to Edge, you can come in here. I could search for Edge and I will find it straight away. I've already pinned it to my home screen. So this is the browser. It looks similar to what you've seen with Internet Explorer, except it's a bit cleaner, I suppose would be a fair way to point out. There's a couple of new features in it. First of all, you can use the star button to create a favorite. There's also a reading view, so I'm going to jump into a page on our site. And I can select this reading view, which for those of you using iOS or Mac, you will have seen this before. So I can click on this and see how it automatically removes all the images and makes it nice and simple to read. Now I may choose to actually favorite that and put that into my reading list. So I can favorite it and put it into a reading list. Now a reading list is a list of items that you want to read at a later date. You can access it from what's called the hub. You click on the hub here, my GoToMeeting out, and you can see what you've added to your reading list in the past, and your favorites, etc. I'll whip that out of reading mode. I'm just going to come back to the home page. The last bit in Edge, which is quite neat, is the ability to be able to sketch across or make a web note. So this links into a Microsoft OneNote. So if I click on web note, so just to exit from that, I'll click on this button up here. And you'll see that it's gone purple. And I can actually now draw over this if I want to. I could do this with a pen. You can see my drawing's not brilliant. I could highlight portions of this if I wanted to, and generally go to town. I can then save that. I can save it to OneNote. I'll cover off that later on. In fact, I'm going to save it into a new section in OneNote, and we'll show you that later on. I can also share that and send that as an email if I wanted to. So it pops out to the right, brings out some options to share it. And I can exit it, and it drops out the colorings that I've put in. So that's pretty cool. These three dots drive you to the rest of the menus. One of the useful ones here is if I want to right click and open an Internet Explorer, you can do that. One of the other questions that we get asked quite often is how do I change my default search engine? So when I come up here and search for you'll see that my results are in Bing, and you may choose not to use that. You can come into settings, and you have to go a long way to do this, which is understandable. It's a Microsoft product. They prefer you to use their search engine. But you come into settings, scroll right the way down into advanced settings, scroll down further into change search engine, and you can choose which search engine you want. I haven't installed Google on this machine. Again, that's details in the materials which you can download either during or after this presentation. And just a reminder, the presentation's also been recorded. In settings, there's some other settings areas that you can jump through and work through from the three dots there. Okay, we're going to move on to File Explorer. Which is similar to what you've seen in the past. There's just a couple of areas that are different. So So you can see here it's showing up my recent files. If I come into a folder and come into this Windows 10 demo folder, you'll see that we've got some photos. Now, right down on the bottom right hand of the screen here, I can flip between the two. So I can have a list view, or I can have an image view. And you'll see, because we know it's got a picture in there, the ribbon changes. So I can actually come in and access and change those photos if I want to. So that's a small difference. The other ability is this quick access. So I can choose a drive, say, I can right click, I can pin it either to the start menu, or I can pin it, which this one already is, pick a different folder. I can pin this to the start, or pin that to my quick access, and it appears up in this quick access area. So that's quite useful to be able to configure this. You may also choose to unpin files from there if you want to. So downloads, I might unpin it from the quick access, and documents, I might unpin it from the quick access. So that quick access is quite useful to be able to choose which files you want to be able to see quickly and easily. So I can right click this one and pin it to the quick access, and it comes through. So not a huge change in file settings, File Explorer. Jump out of that. The last area, and this is more relevant to users that have got a touch device, is Windows Ink. So right down on the bottom here in this task notification area, click on this. This is new, and I've got the ability to create sticky notes. Which I can put on my screen. So if I come back to my start, I can see that I've got some sticky notes. Let's just see if you can see those. Yes, you can. So I can actually see and move those sticky notes around. So that's pretty cool. Also in there is the ability, there's a sketchpad, and this is probably more aligned to people that have got a touch device. But I can come in, and I'm just using my mouse here, but I can again draw as I wish, save and share it. So very similar to what you saw on Windows and Microsoft Edge. The last one that is quite useful, and we all use this, at least we at Ripped Orange do, is the screen sketch. So I can take a screenshot, and you'll see that it's automatically taken one, and I'm not sure, hopefully this is coming through as it jumps up different menus within GoToMeeting. I can sketch over it, I can copy it, I could then drop that into an email, I could save it as a file, and this really comes to life if you're using a device with a pen, because obviously you can then write as you wish across it. You can even put a ruler on and draw a line if you wanted to line up to that ruler, etc. So that's pretty cool. So that is all down in the bottom right, the Windows Ink workspace. If you've got a Windows machine without touch, you need to jump into the settings to find that, to turn that on. Thanks for that, Scott. Yeah, I wasn't sure which bits would pop up within GoToMeeting, so we'll come back to this. Oh, it's still there. There we go. We'll get rid of that. They will disappear in a second, hopefully. There we go. Cool. Okay, the next thing we wanted to move on with the PowerPoint. So a couple more polls because we want to touch on a little bit around Office 365. So I'm going to share a couple of polls. First of all, are you using Office 365? So if people could just fill in that poll, that would be great. Excellent. So a lot of you are already, which is wonderful. Thanks for that. And also just want to feel if you're using a hybrid PC. So a hybrid PC is a machine like a Surface or something similar to that. So if you could just fill in this. Okay, I'm just going to cover really lightly the hybrid PC side of things because there's not too many of you using. Most of you are using a normal computer, i.e. not one with touch. But the one thing that you will see, cool, so when I click on the button here, hopefully the Action Center pops out and there's a thing called tablet mode. When I click into tablet mode, okay, when I click into tablet mode, you'll see that the menu down the bottom left changes. Now, bear with me if that hasn't worked for you on GoToMeeting. Oh, it looks like it did. So you can see here that this menu shrunk up. The other important thing that happens with tablet mode is that, and tablet mode's designed for if you're using a touch-based device, is that when you click on things, you end up with what's called the, and so this is, remember this is the screenshot that's just coming up now that we had before. And it's interesting, I see that black line that's coming up on that screen again, Scott, that's interesting. That's see something that's maybe GoToMeeting haven't checked their GoTo settings, but anyway, I'll move it down a bit. This is more aligned to using with a touch device. You'll see that the menus are a lot bigger and orientated. So what you'll see in Windows 10 when we pop up this menu is I've got different choices of programs. If I search for OneNote, I've got both OneNote 2006, which is a desktop app, and OneNote, the Windows Store app. So I've got two programs that do the same thing, just look a little bit different on the way you're interfacing with the device. So obviously there's a training need around that and also a setup thing to consider. But that's all that I want to cover off on Windows with touch devices. We cover that a little bit more in the manual. Right. For those, here we go, cool. For those that are using a Office 365, you'll have an Office 365 login, but you also may have also been exposed to what's called a Microsoft account. Now this is really important. They're two different things. A Microsoft account is your personal identification verified by Microsoft for you as an individual, not for the organization you work with. It's not your work login. A tip is don't have the same email for your Office Microsoft account and your Office 365 account. You end up getting lots of warnings, etc. And in the materials, I've included a link there on how to change your personal account or change the profile on that. How that begins to eventuate in Windows 10 is when I click down here on the right, you can see here I've got a login and I'm logged in as Cloud Coach. I come into changing my account settings. So to get to account settings in Windows 10, you go up here and into settings, and over on the right, account. Now in this scenario, I've logged into this machine with a personal OneDrive email address. So that's personal.coach@ripedorange.co.nz. And I've also attached in this machine, there's got a couple of accounts, I've also attached and connected this machine through to Office 365 through my Azure Active Directory, which you have with Office 365. That's included for free. What that means is that then you are then bonded to your Office 365 site, so you don't get a lot of reminders saying, hey, log in, etc. Now, for organizations who own a machine, what I would suggest is that actually you log in and you have the login always as your Office 365 identity. Now we've blogged about that under Windows 10 setup tips. So there's a blog which you can go through and view. Again, there's a link in the materials. So what that does is it links it through, and it means for the user, when they log into the machine, they log in as with their Office 365 login details, not with a Windows account or with a domain account, which you may not have. So have a read of that. That makes life a lot easier. You have to do it from a fresh build, and you can only have one person that logs in at a time, but then it means that you've got one login, which is your Office 365 account, and you don't have this Microsoft account showing up throughout the system, which is useful, or you connect that as a second period of time. Where that becomes, for Office 365 users, you'll have seen this. I'm going to create a document. I'm going to go File, Save as. You'll see it's asking me where do I want to put it. So it's into my OneDrive, which is a work account, or I can choose my Insights, again, which is work, or my OneDrive personal. You'll see that I haven't even connected it. It'll start to ask me if I want to sign in and do that. In this case, I need to sign in with my personal account. You can't even turn that so that menu doesn't appear off. The thing to remember from an organizational point of view is anything that's put in this OneDrive personal, you as an organization has no control, so that data is getting leaked out. And there's a lot of other security settings which I'm not going to go into depth, but you can cover that in Windows 10. We've covered off Edge browser. The last bit that I want to cover off was, so we've covered off the connecting accounts and choosing which default apps. So again, you can choose which apps in the settings area. And the apps, which are the default apps. So do you always want to use the desktop, etc. for logging in. The last area I want to cover off was Cortana, which is a bit of fun. So I'm going to play this video. Hopefully you can hear it. Okay, enough of that. We've got Cortana running down on the bottom left here. So I can ask Cortana some questions. I'm not sure whether I should do that. Hey Cortana, hover over here, and you just say, hey Cortana, what's the weather? Try that again. What's the weather?
Right now, it's 22 and sunny.
I'm not sure if I believe that, Cortana, but anyway. So Cortana, just like Siri, you can ask questions. It will also give you a picture of your day. So you can see here, I'm tracking a flight in from Melbourne. Set up that information there is actually in my calendar. And here's a tip also, you'll see that when you click on the time now in Windows 10, if that pops up, your calendar actually pops up and you can see the events that you've got for the day, which is pretty cool. The other thing Cortana can do, oh look, it shows I've asked it to track this flight and it's now telling me that it's been delayed, which is pretty useful. It's pulling up some news. I can choose to create an appointment. I can also ask it things like find my presentation. And it'll go away and it's looking for documents now, so not necessarily files online. Or I could say, what's the... Sydney, and it'll come up and show that. So it's somewhat useful there. It also goes as far as when you let it to look into your calendar, it'll show you, hey Dave, you need to be here and you're here and it's going to take you 10 minutes, so we suggest you leave now. So it can come do some areas like that. To set up Cortana in the settings, you need to log in with a Microsoft account, so not with your work account. So that's one reason why you need to do that, because it's a personal relationship with your information. So you can come into settings and you go through and you log in. And we've got some tips on that. Good question. Cortana shows that it isn't available in my area. So yes, there's a trick to getting that going. I'll put up a blog on that later on. It's changed, but basically you need to change the language settings. So you'll see here, I've got my language settings have changed to Australian. And as soon as you change those language settings, it pops up. and starts to become available. And that's got easier in the anniversary edition. So I'll put up 2 links for you, Scott, on that afterwards. And it shows the history. There is an iPhone version, but not in New Zealand yet. Maybe it would work on a Windows 10 phone. I imagine it would. So Cortana is quite useful if you let it be useful in that space. You can also say, hey, set me a reminder. It'll think about it. I can either key this in or I can add a to get bread. You through person. So you can do quite a lot of stuff within Cortana, and I'll send you a couple of links on that. So that finishes off what I wanted to cover in this half-an-hour webinar. As I mentioned, you can grab out of the materials. There's a guide, and you'll also get, once you drop out of this, a quick link with the full recording of this webinar. If you've got any questions or you want to go through Windows 10 in a bit more detail, I've just covered on this really lightly, a lot more that you can do. Feel free to reach out. Thanks again, and I hope you found this session useful. If you've got any questions, feel free to answer them in the chat. I'll hang around for a couple of minutes. That's quite good. Being able to put a poll and see whether people are actually watching. It's quite useful. I don't know if it's with this